This podcast is sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. Currently, you can get free delivery on all orders over £40 and 10% of all online orders by using our code of TakesThatChance10.
Jepson's there, Billy in, a goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Good evening, guys. If you are coming to join a happy meeting, then you've clicked on the wrong podcast. We're the greatest team in football. Maybe not. Huddersfield Town, what can you say? Thanks for tuning in. We're going to try and somehow make some sense to the debacle at the moment. That is Huddersfield Town, and joining me to unpack what has been a pretty horrendous 4 days of Terrier action is Mr. Simon Copland. Pozza, looking like a scout today, mate. You said it was a Gummersall Boys?
Gummersall Boys, mate, yeah. I've changed my allegiance.
And Phil Senior, a man who would never go to stand up with a referee too. We'll talk about that later on as well, because my bald comrade, Mr. Drysdale, what a legend, man. There's more referees, more bald people. So have some respect for them. Yeah, that'd be a bit of light art stuff, because I think we might going to need it on that as well. But guys, these last two games were absolutely huge. Both this time last week, Wycombe and Middlesbrough, totally out of sorts, totally out of form. We knew where we were at, but Jesus Christ, what is going on with Huddersfield Town? I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you, but I think we've got to start with Wycombe Wanderers, haven't we, really? And Si, what a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, worst possible outcome, really, wasn't it? I think when we spoke last week, we said we wanted 4 points minimum from 6. And here we are with none. And it wasn't just the fact we've gone down to 2 defeats, but I think the manner of those defeats as well, particularly Wycombe, gives kind of a lot of concern and kind of alarm, really, kind of the rest of the season. As you know, Kosi, I missed the second half of Wycombe. I decided in my wisdom to change a plug socket at half time. That led to more problems than it did. So I've had to watch the second half back. So when I kind of switched off, we were 2-1 in the lead. We'd obviously just conceded before half time. A really poor time to concede. A little bit like last night, actually, conceded again on the stroke of half time. We don't seem to be managing games very well. And then obviously my phone was buzzing from the WhatsApp groups and what have you, and flicked on the score at the end and saw we'd lost 3-2. I've watched it back since, and really, really poor second half. Just looked really nervous, really scared to express ourselves and play, and some of the kind of similarities with last night, really. In both occasions, albeit kind of maybe the last 10 minutes aside last night, it just felt inevitable. You were watching it and you kind of thought, you just knew what was going to happen. And as fans, kind of particularly sat in our homes and watching it on the screen, has just kind of helped us to do anything. So really disappointing, really dejecting. We'll probably come on to talk about it in more detail, but you look kind of at the fixture list and Swansea up next, and it's difficult to see where any points are going to come from right now. So it's worrying times, definitely.
Pause Wycombe game. We had the perfect start, mate, didn't we? We couldn't have got any better than that. They looked what they were, awful. And what is it? Why can't we just? We don't seem to be able to manage a game, and I don't think we've been able to manage a game pretty much all season. Really, we seem to be good on the counter and kind of coming back and stuff. But what's that stat that I think we kind of mentioned last night? You've got it there. How many points we've lost from winning positions?
23 all through season now. We've gone in front in games and thrown 23 points away, which is not great at all, is it? I think the thing Si's nailed on the head there. It's the manner of the defeat more than anything. Obviously, losing to Wycombe at home is pretty pathetic anyway. But to go 2-0 up and to lose 3-2 is ridiculously poor. I thought we started well. First 20 minutes, we kind of looked somewhere like being back to us, early season form. There were nice little bits of passing going on, nice triangles. Lewis O'Brien were getting forward, helping out in attack, and you sat thinking, this is decent. All right, yeah, it is only Wycombe, so let's not get too excited. But we're putting in a bit of a performance here. Bakuna gets a goal, and obviously we go 2-0 up, and from that point you're just thinking, all we've got to do now is sort of see this out, and we just didn't. I know a lot of people have sort of mentioned second half performance has been poor, but if you watch it back, first half, Wycombe thoroughly deserved to get that goal and go in at 2-1 if all. They had, I think Sarkley had run off at line, they've hit bar before they've scored. So it was no means like a smash and grab goal that they got, luckily towards end of first half. And you sat there, you're thinking, you're right, a bad time to concede, but we've got 15 minutes now. Cobram's got 15 minutes, he can sort it out, have a word, change things around, just make it a little bit more secure, come out, see first, 15 minutes of second half out, don't concede, and, maybe try, grow back into the game. But, Wycombe before match, 8 games away from home, they'd not won, lost the previous 5 and not scored in 3. Cobram came out afterwards and said, about a lack of confidence in the squad, which is something I'd picked up on really last night, talking to a couple of people. I think there's a mental issue as well as an ability issue there at the moment. But if you can't be confident 2-0 up against a team like Wycombe, we're rock bottom. Don't forget, they're actually rock bottom. When are you going to be confident? And that's what scares me the most at the moment. I don't think we've got the mental ability within the squad for a relegation fight. I don't think we've got the players for it. When we've been poor in the past and down there, you want that all together, all in it together feel. And at the moment, I don't get that from the squad. I don't get that from the fan base. I don't get that from the club as a whole. I think everybody's totally separate at the moment. And, if that's not rectified sooner rather than later, we're going to be back in League One before we know it. And it's a shame, really.
Phil, your microphone's on, mate, so don't embarrass yourself here by talking and not hearing. Is it as bad as we're all making out, mate? How are you seeing it from a professional angle?
I feel quite fortunate that I had Wi-Fi issues for the Wycombe game, so I missed it. I'm absolutely delighted, but yeah, it's a difficult part of the season now, and it's kind of crept up. I looked at the table last night during the game, and I can't believe how close we are with other teams with games in hand. I think there's a mixture of everything. I think there's a mixture of confidence. I think there's a mixture of a lack of ability at certain points of the game where we need it the most. I messaged somebody today. I can't remember if it was on social media, but for me, it's relegation material at the moment. The things that are falling into place, the performances, the like you say, the confidence. It don't look good at all. I thought there were points in the game last night that were good and positive. Young lads, definitely a major positive. But obviously we'll go into that later on. But yeah, it don't look great, to be honest. Doesn't look great at all.
I think one thing that depresses me a little bit is that, again, Richard Keogh, I'm not a fan, but this guy was sent in to shore up the defence, to use his experience. And it's been a disaster. And let me get this guy's name pronounced. Saturday. Ik Pearsu. Now, the guy looked like a kind of Ishmael Miller ability, hard-working, didn't look like he was going to score. But I think we were saying, Poz, on our group chat that you can see what's going to happen here with this guy. And he absolutely bullied us. He bullied us. I would dime for him to play for Town. But you know what? We'd sign him and he wouldn't do any of this stuff. But it was embarrassing, wasn't it? They just didn't know how to handle him. And the guy, they were playing off him. We were bringing others into play. It was so destroying, really. You weren't beaten by like a Troy Dean. This guy were like having a field day, wasn't it? Shows how weak we are, doesn't it? Key positions.
It would desire though, wasn't it? They're fighting for the lives of Wycombe, and they could smell, they could sniff out that we weren't confident, and that give, I'm sure Phil will know from playing that when teams on ropes, even if you're a couple of goals behind and they're fragile, all it takes is a bit of hard work, really, to put them under pressure. It just puts that little bit of doubt in the mind. And, before you know it, as they were 3-2 up and they come away with all 3 points, it's, I said on here, and, been quite vocal that I thought Keogh were, a reasonable signing. I don't think I ever said he would, be a great sign. I thought he were understandable. I thought he'd come in and shore up defence and help out. But as you say, since he's come in, I don't think we've kept a clean sheet yet. It's not just down to him, obviously, but, he's clearly not doing the job he were brought in to do. And again, it's worrying, isn't it, that you, like you say, you're getting outfought and outplayed by, someone from Wycombe. Obviously, no disrespect to them because they've just beat us. So, if there's any Wycombe fans listening, I'm sure they'll be enraged that we keep saying that. But when you look at the table, they're down there, aren't they? They're not a good side, I
think one of the reflections for me, Pos, and if Matt was here, it articulated much better than what I will now, but it felt like we were just trying to overcomplicate things. So, in possession, almost kind of Hogg would drop into that right back space to allow Pippa to push further up the field, and then kind of perhaps we would revert into he would push into centre midfield when we were in possession, or vice versa. We kind of flick between a back three, if you like, with Keogh at the centre of that and Hogg at the right, and then Hogg back into the centre at various times. And for a team struggling the way we are, and for a team kind of looking devoid of confidence, it felt to me like we were trying to almost run before we could walk, and trying to kind of almost neglecting the basics. Now, I appreciate Pippa's a very attacking player, and he has been exposed from his defensive point of view. So in that sense, perhaps what we tried to do corrected it. But I just kind of sensed that it was an unfamiliar position for Hogg. He obviously gave away the penalty trying to do that role. There was a second chance in the second half where the cross comes in from Wycombe's right-hand side, and Hogg gets beaten in the air, in a right-back position. Schofield makes a save. But I just kind of felt like we're tinkering every week with the shape of the team. And I appreciate it's quite difficult when we've got the injuries we've got and we've got a relatively small squad and trying to put kind of round pegs into square holes. But I just kind of sense that these players are being asked to do something different week in, week out, must be scratching their heads kind of thinking, this is bloody complicated. Why don't we just try and stick to the basics, defend as a unit, have Hogg sitting in front of the back four, which he's done throughout his career and been very good at this level, and then try and have a platform from there to kind of express ourselves. But I was just scratching my head thinking, what's he doing over there and who's filling in that space? And I'm not sure that was necessarily the whole downfall of the team, but just be a reflection from me, really.
I think our live chats about our defence at the moment, it doesn't seem to be working. Hopefully we'll get it on later on. But yeah, I mean, we're always going to be hard without Toffolo. We're always going to be a big miss at games, really, that we needed, for him to be involved, big games like this. But wow, Lewis O'Brien, I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you. It's so sad to see a guy who, last season, I still say it a breakthrough season. I know Bradford fans would be saying, well, he did it for us. Yeah, okay, but proper football. But whatever we seem to do with him at the moment,
the thing is, he's not a left back, is it? He's been asked to play in a position that's, almost it's really alien to him.
Why don't we stop guys crossing the ball in Pippa's back? Every match I watch, the guys are just getting crosses in easily, man. Easily.
It's one of them, isn't it? Because we do play that sort of attacking fullback style, it does leave space in behind. And, as Si says, we're trying to drop people into playing positions, asking Johnny Hogg to fill in as sort of almost like a right centre half. And if he's not used to doing that, he's I think I mentioned it right at the start of the season, and I put it down to, people making errors and stuff. But when you're trying to learn a new style or playing a new position, you've got half your mind on actually where I'm supposed to be on pitch. You naturally drift into centre midfield, someone like Hogg, and if he's worrying about that, I need to be back, it's going to take something else away from him. And I think you're bang right. So if you look at the, relegation saviour managers, for want of a better phrase, they all just play dead simple football, don't they? Look at Warnock, simple football. Sam Allardyce, simple football. 4-4-2, Tony Pulis. It's not great to watch. It's nothing, mesmerising in a tactical sense, but it's simple and it works. And, a player has maybe one or two jobs to do, and we seem to be asking us to do 3, 4, 5 and 6. And as you say, they're just not cut out for that sort of style of football. And I think that's contributing to the downfall. More than anything.
I might get this wrong, but was it Stan Ternent who said trying to play champagne football with beer money or something like that, and kind of to an extent maybe it's
even his most experienced, but I've mentioned it there, Keogh, but Jonathan Hogg, what a penalty with that. Why is he diving in there? Why? Is it just again, just confidence to score it lacking. And I suppose it's like, if you'd have been keeping, like, you'd have shouted at him, just like hold him up or whatever. But
yeah, I think there seems to be a lot of that this year, though, don't they? Really, a lot of kind of rash challenges. Bakuna made one last night where he were really close. He grabbed hold of lad's hand and pulled it back. Could have easily been a penalty. Silly little things like this through the basics, the real basics of football, especially, like Pozzy mentioned there. You're down at the bottom, just go back to basics. You can still play this football, because for me, what's the point in changing the style of your play, like just because we're struggling at the bottom? For me, you've got to kind of stick with it. They really do have to stick with it, because it kind of echoes what we've said all along. All the players have been spoken to about the roles and things like this, so they've got to follow this through now. There's got to be tweaks, though, for me. So little tweaks here and there in terms of that kind of safety and kind of safety in numbers and how you're playing. But some of these challenges and in our area, it's bad enough conceding horrendous goals that we do, where the players are just walking through our defence. But to give simple penalties away, for me, it's poor.
Well, I noticed it last night. I think trouble is we're going the other way now, where Middlesbrough guys were dancing in the box and Sarr were like that, as if absolutely scared to put a tackle in, because, we've seen penalties that he's giving away left, right and centre. And other defenders, we're going, like in 4 days, we went from one extreme to the other. But how hard is it, Phil, when you're 2-0 up in a game? You probably, we're not as full of confidence, but we were controlling it. But when something's getting away from you, because the one thing I just don't see with those is you could see that they were getting on top. Yeah, at half time we could have regrouped, but like when they equalised, there were only one team going to win it. How hard is it to get once a team's got momentum and your heads are down, especially when you're on a bad run? How hard is it just to come on, guys, just dig in? Do you just need characters or?
Yeah, it is difficult because it's in your head. So it's literally your performances aren't obviously great. Your results aren't great, and then you get ahead of yourselves, and you can see the other team then in the ascendancy by stealing a goal back, and it does creep into your mind. No matter how experienced or inexperienced you are, you still kind of get that in football. But you've got to trust in the process at the same time, and our process at the moment isn't quite working. So I think obviously that it's going to be a tough end to the season for players and fans. I think gone are the days where we can kind of score a goal and see a game off and relatively easily. I'm not sure when we're going to go on to the last night's game, but for me, they offered nothing. I didn't feel like we were in any trouble. Everything was in front of us. I didn't feel like there was any trouble, but you just knew that there was something was going to happen, and that's not a great feeling when you're watching your team play, to know that there's always going to be a chance.
We'll come on to Porritt in a sec, but you try and think of memories of the worst halves, worst games, this, that, and the other. It's hard to compare Premier League to Championship and maybe even League One, League Two, where we had some shockers. But that 45 minutes against Wycombe, to me, that has got to be one of the worst, easily in the top 5 in the last 10 years, 15 years it's been. Because we're going to beat side by a team worse than us in the form table, 16 points over this season, with even that'll beat the guy who gave us the 100 million with his penalty miss, wasn't it? He were involved but I just think we don't seem to have that fight, the spirit. They you mentioned it earlier, they had the spirit, the energy there. And their manager, he looked like Carlos, he looks like Christ, he had like doing his exams, the world's ending, like that and stuff. But the other guy, you're thinking, God, you'd think like
a rock star.
Like we're having fun. And when he scored the winner, they were jumping on each other. I thought there's a lot to take from that, mate, because I just look at Carlos, I just think it just transfers itself over. Maybe you can be an amateur psychologist, but I just look at the guy, and if I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, Jesus, because every minute you're seeing him, I know he's animated, but he's shouting, he's boarding, he's never relaxed, where Gareth Ainsworth just were like, chilled out. I don't know. It was just kind of a.
Ainsworth got his motorbike, didn't he, and drove to the Cross Keys near me for his rock band kind of gig on Saturday night. I like him, Ainsworth. Hats off to him. It kind of watching football, he kind of can almost put managers into two buckets. You've got the suit manager or the tracksuit manager, and he kind of fits neither of those molds, and it's quite refreshing actually.
They deserved it, Si. They deserved to win. You can't even argue that they got lucky. I
agree.
They deserve the 3 points, mate.
But I think the thing for me, Kosi, is expectations. You talk about some of the years that have gone in the past in the Premier League years, and in truth, our expectations for a lot of those games were quite low. We kind of went into games as underdogs. I think what was quite different, and even that's true of the Championship to an extent, than this season. I think what was different on Saturday was that we were by far and away expected to win that game, by far and away on paper had the better team despite all the kind of injury issues, selection issues, etc. And yet we crumbled in the way we did. Forgive me, Kosi, because I just want to ask Phil a question, because I thought it was quite interesting, Phil. You mentioned that they should stick with the style of play. But how long for? So say we're on this conversation again in March, do you still stick with them? Do you stick with it in April? Or does there come a time when actually maybe that's with the manager leaving or whatever, but does there come a moment in time when you've got to do something different?
No, I agree. And I think, I personally think that it's got to be a style in the way that they are playing at the moment. I don't think you can change it too much because you've spent a full season there. And what you've got to remember as well is the players that they're bringing in and this philosophy, it's all about building kind of this kind of way of playing and the way that they want us to be. So I'll be massively shocked if they turn around and just went, right, we're just going to go route one.
You might
and just turn them.
To me,
well, this is it. Well, this is it. So
you might as well panic second, mate.
Yeah.
Because that's
for me at this point of the season, the passing around the back and bringing pressure on yourself needs to stop from the keeper. It needs to stop. For me, we've got to get the other team out of the pitch and we've got to play in their half more and more. And I would prefer that style of play anyway. For me, I'd rather not be messing around in and around the goalie and drawing attention to Ryan and things like this. But I'm not talking about keeping it exactly the same as what he wants. But I still think there's got to be an element of how he wants the team to play to be very similar. Because, like you've said there, Kosi, what's the point then? We've just wasted a full season.
Yeah.
Because if we go down,
because the people out there now will be saying that Carlos isn't the right man to take us forward. That Carlos isn't the right man to see us through the next few months to the end of the season. And actually, we should bring someone in who has a different style. And I agree. Whilst Carlos is in the role, we probably will and should continue with this philosophy. But does there come a moment in time? And for me personally, it's not now. It's not now. I think kind of we're probably 2 or 3 wins away from being back in the table, and we're maybe kind of panicking before we need to. But there might come a moment in time in March and April when actually we do need to kind of resort to something different.
We'll cover the Boro game and then we'll kind of go on to Carlos' future because we got some comments on.
I got a bit excited.
Once he said it, that's it.
Calm down.
I've thought of the game actually, and it's not that long ago. Luton at home. You remember that Friday night where, to be fair, it might have been arguably. I mean, that was 90 minutes of Jill, so I might have argued myself out of a point. But mate, I think the fact is we're at home. The pressure's on. We have to win, deliver against a rival, and we've just absolutely. We had the start. We didn't even have the start against Luton. But that Wycombe game, where does it rank for you, mate?
It's up there. I think it were. I think we were going for promotion in League One back in day. We were 2-0 up. I think a couple of times at home. I think it was Swindon. I seem to remember we had South Stand. When they were doing them trials, maybe Swindon and Dagenham. I think when they came back and drew. We threw a couple of defeats, victories, away. And it was very similar to that, but just moving on to Middlesbrough again last night. You start off really well, first 15-20 minutes, and I'm sat watching and got again thinking, I thought Boro, with Warnock in charge, I thought Boro would be a little bit more up for this.
I'll just stop you there straight away. So we'll move on to Boro. We've been a debacle at the back against the worst team in the league who haven't won again for ages. So let's keep the same back four. We are left back that isn't even a left back. I couldn't believe it, mate. I could not believe it. Well, I could really, because Carlos is stubborn. But that team, that defensive back four, what's he thinking there? People are just guaranteed a shirt no matter what. And people say, well, who would you put in? There's loads you'd put in, wouldn't you? Great slow.
I think playing O'Brien at left back, I don't think that's ever going to work because he's, and we've chatted about earlier just before we came live that by putting O'Brien in as a left back as well, you're also argumentatively removing one of your better players from midfield. All right, he's not playing as well as in the last season, but nobody is. But he's still, he's still a threat, and he will pick the ball up and move forward. So why he's decided to play him at left back and totally take him out of that area, I don't know. Maybe with the 3 that he played there, he thought he had more, better options in there than O'Brien, but. So I said earlier, square pegs in round holes again, and it's just confusing, isn't it? When he gave that penalty away last night, all right, well, a little bit of a rash challenge, but camera panned to him, and Paul, it looked like he was going to burst into tears, did O'Brien. He looked like one of them, when you're 8 years old and you give a penalty away and you just look dejected, and it was just like, for fuck's sake, here we go again, done something else wrong. And a lot of this what's going on at the moment at Town, for me, it's not ability in a lot of them. All right, some of them are up to scratch 100%, but it's mindset of them. It's the mindset. It's the mindset of the club. It's the mindset of the fan base. I've said before on here, 4 seasons now we've been scrapping to stay in a division. All right, first season in Premier League I'll allow because we stayed up, so you can discount that. But for 3 seasons now this is all we've chatted about. Are we going to survive? Are we going to survive? Are we going to survive? Once that mentality is ingrained in the fan base, all right, we're not even in grounds, but players must see it on social media. Everyone's kicking off all the time and stuff like that. People from club clearly read social media because articles come out and basically answer questions that people have been asking on stuff like this, on other podcasts, on Twitter, Facebook and stuff like that. So people must see it. And for me, that's the biggest problem for me. It's not the fact that we've not got the ability in the squad. It's the fact that mentally, I think a lot of them players think we're already down, and that's pathetic.
I just can't make an head or tail of it. Bristol City, I know the manager went last night and maybe they weren't on the greatest form, but anyone who watched us that night, anyone who watched that first 20 minutes last night even, until then Benza went off, which we'll come on into a second, but that was football, fantastic football. And we've seen it a lot this season, so it's not, I think we disagree with last season where, for me, we didn't see any of that kind of standard. You could see the stuff this year to pin your hat on. We've gone to Swansea and won. We've given Watford a good pasting, and look where they are. But that's what makes it so baffling. But Phil, everyone's shouting about we need a striker and this, that, and the other. But it's pretty simple, mate. If we keep conceding 2-3 goals every game, we're going down. And why can we just not? I don't know.
The goal last night when the lad cut in from wide area. For me, you've got to be working on things like that in training. And for me as a goalkeeper, you know how you've set up in the past and together which way you're going to send him. So both players were squared up. So for me, O'Brien, either needs to send him down the line, okay, and then you can rejig in the middle, and then you set up to defend the cross. Or if you're bringing him inside, you're bringing him into traffic. Because if you're going to ever bring someone into inside, if you're the winger and you're telling your fullback to bring him inside, it's opening up the angle, so it's harder for the goalkeeper. Okay, so there's 2 things there that he could have done, and then the rest of the players react. Naby San never reacted to anything that happened there. So they brought him inside, and he should just be stood and ready for the ball because he weren't going anywhere else, and it never happened. And little basic things like that you learn that. I learned that in under 14, 15, 16 at Huddersfield about whether to send them in or send them wide. Real basic things, and we just don't seem to be doing the basics. We go back to Keogh. I missed the Wycombe game. I've not really seen him perform poorly yet. Apart from that pass across face of the goal, I think he's just kind of done enough. He's been all right. All the issues come from Sarr. Defensively, the issues come from Sarr. And when you've got a player like that in between you, you're worried. It does worry you. O'Brien had nothing to do. Apart from that goal, there was no one beat him. No one got past him. Okay, O'Brien had a bit of a shock at left back, giving the ball away all the time.
Then Benza goes off, and it's a different game. It was incredible, man. He looked.
Why isn't Benza even playing though? Kosi in first place, if he's knackered, I don't get it.
Well, this is just it. I could not believe it last night. So I couldn't even believe it after the game. Even worse, because it's like, there were no way. I mean, I know the physios are nearer to it than us, and they know a lot more than us. But what Lee Hendry said at the time, I think we all did. There was no way he could have carried on. I could not believe it, man. When you were like raging, and even almost like, what do you reckon, Carlos? And then when it comes out after the game that he's been playing in pain for 2 weeks, now he's got a muscle injury. It's embarrassing. It's proper amateur. I could not.
Everything about that was amateur. The fact that he cleared a ball where he did, instead of understanding there was no one around him and he could have let it run and carried on playing out wide, swinging his left foot, that was ridiculous in the first place. And even like you just said there, I was sat and a message out straight away, gone. You could see he's gone. It's straight on the attachment on his pelvic. I'm not even a bloody physio, and I could tell that kind of injury. You could tell he'd gone. Then it lets him carry on playing. And he's been, and like Posy said there, if he's been struggling, how can you let someone go back on who's been struggling? You can blatantly see he's struggling. But that's a big injury. That's a big loss for us, is that?
Bill,
massive loss.
can't believe it.
Can I jump on the bandwagon, Kosi? Because I've got a point on this.
Just to finish there, surely Carlos shouldn't be saying that after. That's just so naive, manager. It just makes him look an idiot. You know, he just said, okay, you know, all right. It didn't look good anyway, but for him to say that afterwards, though, I know he's being honest, but that just made it look. We knew at the time, like you said, Phil, that he should never have carried on, and then for him to say that's been playing in pain. What a stupid! It's just incredible.
But this is what happens, isn't it, at this stage of the season when you're struggling and you're wanting your best, most influential players to play. The pressure on them to perform is high, isn't it? And it's not worked out very well, has it?
Sorry, Steve.
For me, Kosi, sorry, mate. Agree with everything that's been said there. The thing that probably perplexed me as well was the substitution that was made. So at that point in the game, I think we're 1-0 up. We're doing quite well. The style of football is quite good, and Benza's a good outlet ball. And suddenly he takes Benza off, where I thought at the time the logical replacement was probably Aaron Rowe, who's played that position quite a bit this season. Arguably Sorba Thomas, why he wasn't on the bench, we don't know. He's obviously done well in the B team today. But then he brings Alex Vallejo on into centre midfield, and then suddenly we're reshuffling the pack. I'm not actually quite sure who ended up on the right-hand side. It might have been Pritchard, with some kind of changes to the formation, arguably. But things were working well at that point, and obviously having an injury to a player like Benza is never ideal, but I just thought at that moment in time, go like for like, the formation's working, we're on top in the game, and then it didn't work, and ultimately kind of Rodan came on in the second half and did well actually as a left wing back. But I just thought the substitution was bizarre.
Wycombe played well on Saturday, probably our best player. I couldn't believe he dropped him. And then Sorba Thomas, I thought that was an opportunity live on Sky, you know, see what he could do. And he's not even on the bench, but I just think, I mean, Phil, you mentioned about, you know, Rowe and
Phillips.
But Medcat, do you think I'm being a bit harsh? It kind of made him look a mug, really, because what they did in 20 minutes, although counter that with a red card, so maybe that had a lot to do with it, but they give us more in 20 minutes at the end. It made us just think, why the hell are you giving these guys a start? Or do you just think he's saying that because they've nothing to lose? They were at 10 men. Do you think that's to count?
Funny, yeah. It's a funny one because you do, because of the impact that they both had straight away. Fans are thinking, well, why is Phillips not being playing? Why have we made that decision? I totally agree with you. It's like the decision to bring Vallejo on in midfield with Hogg. I've said before, pointless playing both of them, and I would play Vallejo at the moment instead of Hogg. It didn't look great, did it? Because everyone's like, "What are you doing as a manager? Why aren't you playing these? Look at these kids. Why aren't you playing these kids?" Well, just so happens that they had a decent, you know. I mean, Rowe, how many times did he cut inside and lose the ball? You know, people forget that because he actually contributed and had a few shots and put a few crosses in. So, it's a difficult one, wasn't it? But I do think Rowe should have come on and like we say, go back to it. O'Brien for me at left back was poor. He had a bad game. Giving simple 5-yard passes away. Went into midfield, he was brilliant. I thought he was great. I thought he was back to his best, driving forward again and kind of dictating play a little bit. So it didn't help him either. So you've got a bit of trust in the juniors.
Jaden Brown's played 90 minutes today, hasn't he? So obviously we're all under the impression that Jaden Brown was kind of sidelined because of this concussion injury, and that may well have been the case. I don't understand the concussion protocols, and it may be that he couldn't play last night. But I do find it a bit bizarre that he couldn't play yesterday and has then played 90 minutes today, and we had a makeshift left back, even for him not to have made the bench. But I guess that's something we don't know.
We've got some comments coming through. Someone must have flicked a magic switch. We must have got our Phillips and Rowe kind of YouTube equivalent on to make stuff happen. But Daniel Hemingway, I think Carlos needs 4 points out of the next 2, but then thinking who we're going to get, that would make the difference if he went and that as well. Matt Ellis, is this the same downhill trend we've been on for 3 years or a completely different one? Gary Wilkinson, do you think the players can't relax to play the game due to the overload of tactics from the touchline? I mean, that is a good point. I mean, it's an interesting one because anytime we have a breaking play or what have you, it's like a team meeting and he's shouting. I think the trouble is, I think it's easy to say all this, isn't it, when we're on a bad run. This was probably happening when we were winning games early on in the season and against good teams. I think sometimes you can look at it, amateur psychologists, and do think, why is he doing this? And he probably would always be shouting and going animated, and he has, hasn't he, from the start.
I mentioned before, if you watch him in training, there's constant information overload. So they're used to it. It's not something that's that's going to put them off at a point like this. They're used to it, and I'll go back to the style of play. That obviously the players they're buying into it, and and obviously in training they're getting that same input. It don't look great from the side, and we do that, don't we? We look to find excuses, don't we? So we're at a point now. A month ago, were we all thinking the same?
No, we weren't.
Probably not. I definitely weren't. It's only last night I've looked at it and thought, oh shit, here we go. This is, we're in a crap position here. Only last night. So we always look for excuses, don't we? We always look for that next thing. We've all been happy with where they've played. We've not disagreed with that, but we've noticed that obviously the mistakes creep in. So it's a difficult one to kind of analyse really, and I think if you look too deep into it, it's a bit tricky. But I think we can all agree that sometimes within the games, I think his decision making in terms of subs and maybe changing to a plan B, as we like to mention, hasn't really happened, and I think that's what we can probably start questioning now because of the position that we're in.
Oh, pause. I don't even say his name, mate. It begins with A and ends in D. It just gives us. I can't say any more talk about him. What did he give us last night? Nothing, man. Absolutely nothing. But yet he still puts on a shirt and has another Town badge on his chest, mate. He should never play for us again, man. Move on, Carlos. I'm sick of seeing him. He contributes nothing.
It is all a bit pointless in you playing him, to be fair.
This was his chance.
There's no point though, is there? Like you say, it's just leave him in at training. Don't even bring him down to training. Let him see his contract out and be there, because you might as well play one at young lads, aren't you? You might as well play Daly or someone like that, because at least they've got
a contract with, isn't he?
You know what? He's clearly, exactly. He's not going to get a contract. So unless he's that good, sometimes you have players who are that good that you just have to play, where he's that bad, he should just not play. And it'd probably improve things by not being, commentators, I've heard them say a few times, here comes out, when he trots on front bench, this could be his time to shine. He's had 3 seasons nearly to shine.
Last night, to be fair, their Sky man did pick up on it that it's just not worked out. But then you're thinking, well, why the hell is he even on our pitch tonight? But stuff from that as well. But
I'm glad you mentioned it with Lee Hendrick that was doing the co-commentating.
They were good, wasn't it?
Oh, well, I'm going to have to disagree with you. Uh-oh. The ball came into the box and it landed to Campbell's feet. And he tried smacking it, right? Instead of just like getting a contact on it. And it went over or wide or whatever. And the comment was, Huddersfield fans would have been happy seeing it land to him. If anybody, they'd have been happy. Anyone hear that?
Yeah.
And current form, no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. Oh God, honestly, I can't get my head around it at times. I think the young kids at this club should be smelling blood now at the moment. It's an opportunity for them to say, do you know what? These senior pros, they're not performing, and if I get my chance, I could get 3-4 year contracts out of this season if I play well. I can cement my team into this, cement my place into this team for next season, whichever league I'm in, whether I'm in League One or Championship. That's a massive opportunity for some of these kids at the moment.
Is Carlos going to give him that opportunity though? Because like we've just said, Bacuna every week, Pritchard turns up and struts about. You've got a lot of players there underperforming. Naby Sarr, centre half. We've got 2 centre halves that are young lads. Just why are they not playing? We hear all this noise coming from clubs that these youngsters are the future and all this. And, all right, they're young lads, but young lads get into first teams if they're good enough at championship level. And if Carlos doesn't trust them, why are they not getting through? Is it because they're not just experienced or just not good enough? Or is it Carlos a little bit afraid?
That Plymouth game, mate, we lost and we went out of the cup, but there were guys that kind of passed an audition for me that night that looked good. I remember a few interviews after they were letting energy enthusiasm, right, here we go, I'm going to get a chance now. And you just kind of reverted to type and that as well. It's just like so disappointing. Phil, I've got to ask you this, and it's coming in, and we always ask you about keepers. Here we go. So Tom says Schofield had a shocker. Keeper who can command the back four, and someone needs to keep Sarr in check. I was thinking that last night because not really. I don't know what to think of him, to be honest, Phil. But do you think that we need the Rottweiler in, mate? A bit more experience. Someone just he can't.
It's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I don't know if you were watching this, but I remember playing behind Nat Brown. Nat Brown was a striker, and they changed him into a centre half, and he actually was one of my favourite players to play behind because it made me concentrate. It made me concentrate 100% more. because I was he had everything. So he had everything. He was strong. He could read a tackle. He could make a tackle. He was good in the air. But you literally had to kind of babysit him and tell him where to be. Like right shoulder, left shoulder, squeeze up, get in here. And you were constantly on it, and it kept me focused. And I think you're right. I've noticed it in a few keepers in the past. I won't name names that we've had, who a lot of fans do like. But commanding your area is one of the biggest parts of a goal, if not the biggest part of the game. Because I can't remember which keeper it was. I think it was Schmeichel, and he mentioned if I don't have to make a save in a game, it means I've done my job right. Because you should be organising that team and making sure that they're in positions where they should be. And it's hard to tell on the TV. You can't tell. You can't see what Ryan's doing every minute of the game. You can't see the kind of info he's giving. But it is definitely a very tricky situation when you've got a centre half like Sam. I'm not slating the guy. I think he's a decent player. But when you've got someone who's as inconsistent as he is, and a young keeper who's obviously trying to make a name for himself. And let's not forget, he's had a lot of experience up in Scotland as well. So he's played a fair bit of first team football. So it's a difficult situation, really. You've got to be really commanding.
Thomas Bradshaw says Schofield needs time. Only 21. I remember Smithers getting a lot of stick when he first came in, but maybe a relegation scrap isn't the best time to give Schofield those games. I mean, he got away with that one in the first half, wasn't it? When they luckily blew up to the referee, but what?
Well, I mean, to be fair,
especially a young, you'll know, Phil, being a young keeper as well, because you look at players, positional wise, and their ages where they sort of come into their own, and your strikers and then your flair players tend to be your 21 to 25-year-olds, your midfielders, a little bit older in defences, and your keepers. Obviously, I know from fitness and stuff like that as well, but they play on till they're 30 plus, and they can still be really effective as keepers, because, like you say, it's not always about saving it, is it? Obviously, that's part of the job. But if you organisation and talking to your players and communicating with them, and when you're young, it must be quite daunting to go out there. And it's Richard Keogh, for example, experience, will have played thousands of games, and Schofield's telling him what to do as a keeper. I don't know if you had that situation, Phil, but do you feel a little bit, well, he's done all this before, I don't really need to bother with him? Or if I tell him to do something, will he turn around and tell me to get stuffed? Do you have a bit of that in the back of your mind?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think the game's changed. I do think the game's changed because when I was younger, these pros were, it were such a higher level in terms of kind of that status in a club. The kids now seem to, be as well thought of as the most, highest wage earning in the club kind of thing. So, but I do think that's a massive point. Something you lot might not want to hear, but my first season that I played fully, we got relegated, and it was the best experience for my career, for myself personally, because it was really challenging, and I came out a better person and a better player for it, and I'm sure Ryan will. But he's really got to, as a goalkeeper, you've got to forget about the outfielders kind of thing in terms of like worry about what they're thinking. You're there for your own job. You've got to be quite selfish, because you can concede 2 goals, but for the next 50 minutes, if you make 10 saves and it's kept you in the game and you win the game, even though you might have made like a one, couple of mistakes here and there, it's still a good performance from you. And it's really difficult for a goalkeeper to do that. Outfielders, you've got another, 10 players around you that can support you if you've made a mistake. Goalkeepers don't. And it's quite an isolated position. So I don't want to say it's a difficult one, really. I think in a position like this, I prefer an experienced goalkeeper in goals.
Surely that's
personally.
why not in, Phil, that, because I read a quote with me, I'm there to push to give my experience to the young players and stuff, but the Blackburn kind of fans said he would a really kind of solid player for them, the majority of them. And
it's a tough one, though, because it's another change, isn't it, to your back line? We talked about defensive failures, and all of a sudden now you'll put another keeper in who you're struggling defensively anyway, then to put another keeper in, and does that, one keeper might like to come for it all the time, one keeper might stay on his line. There's all different things to consider, isn't there, when you just say, just swap keeper and it'll be fine. It's quite an important piece of the team, isn't he, a keeper?
Yeah.
I'd persist with Schofield. I think if I kind of roll back the clock, maybe kind of 6, 7, 8 months, we were all kind of clamouring for him to start ahead of him, but we all kind of thought he was the future. Time will tell.
He's back on Saturday, mate.
What's that?
He might be inspired on Saturday.
Let's hope he's
back on the bench. Come on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you need to persist in him, but that's kind of a selfish part from me as a keeper. I think it'd be unfair. I think it's a good experience for him. But if I was a manager, I'd definitely be thinking twice about what I would do in that situation.
Dwayne Holmes has contributed 0, mate.
Yeah, he's been a bit.
Everyone, but
we've got a bit underwhelming. Kind of long throws aside, really, hasn't he? We've signed a long throw expert. His kind of contribution to home is a bit more akin to Rory Delap than it is kind of a flying winger. I think what's difficult is that from reading between the lines, we've kind of brought him in sooner than perhaps we originally planned to replace Carolighton. But as I see it, they're very, very different players. Carolighton wants to be on the ball in the middle of the park, dictating play, passing left, right, and centre. Holmes naturally is probably more of a winger. You'll probably know better than myself, Phil, or maybe Pos. But very, very different players. So it's hard to kind of draw some comparisons. And again, with Holmes, probably quite a lot of expect of him. This was a guy who was kind of not really in the Derby first team at the time we signed him. They were below us in the league, and suddenly we're expecting him to kind of move heaven and earth. And I'm not sure right now that he's truly up to that. Obviously, I hope he improves.
Pause. We've got to talk about Carlos, mate, in a bit more detail. I know we've touched on it a little bit, but it just worries me, mate. The inexperienced coach, inexperienced people around him all over the club, if we're being honest with you, and that as well, above and below and the side. He's keeping faith with players that are letting him down. He's never really been in this situation before. We don't look like any answers to me anytime soon assuring this defence up, stopping goals going in. And like you said, Phil, it's weird how football goes. I remember that Blackburn game when South scored that winner, that club put that video out when everyone's going nuts. And that bloody hell, I must have retweeted about 8 times. I'm like, getting a good end to the year. But the trouble is, once something gets going, Pos, like kind of in free fall, you need him. It just worries me so much that we can't stop conceding goals. How are we going to stay duo, man?
It's a tough one, Carlos, isn't it? Because you've got Carlos in the managerial post, and then you've got Huddersfield Town as a situation. So if you just specifically home in on Carlos, look at his results. Look at the results on the pitch. That's the most important thing. Look at a slide after Christmas. Do you have any faith in him to be able to sort all that lot out? There's people out there calling him out and wanting him to be sacked and stuff like that. It's a tough one. I can see it from both sides. I just think that we've talked about him being dealt a bad hand with injuries, but then you look at the type of injuries that we're getting, muscular, soft tissue injuries. Is that down to how he's training the squad? Is he working them too hard? Are his backroom staff not capable of picking up when a player might be on the brink of an injury and just saying, look, Carlos, go easy on him for a couple of days because he's struggling? That's down to your medical team, your physios, all part of the backroom staff, I get, but Carlos obviously fronts that up, so it falls on him. You're looking at game management, very, very poor. 23 points thrown away when we've been in winning positions. Inexperience, all right, yeah, I get that, it's learning. It's still no excuse. You've got to be able to see these games out. Players playing in random positions, all right, yeah, injuries dictate sometimes that, but, Lewis O'Brien at left-back, perfect example. You're solving one problem and creating another. Lack of seemingly wanting to play these young lads who are so highly regarded by, the powers that be at the club, and the reason that they were brought in was to, bring these players through and stuff. But then on flip side, you look, and he had a really good start to the season when his first choice 11 were available. So he's obviously got some. I think the club, though, and again, this falls back to chairman and decision making. I know we've probably got penciled in just to talk about his little statement later on. But again, Phil, he's brought him in under all this, all this gusto of, new ethos, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do other. Gets him till Christmas and he's performing well, gives him a contract extension. I think his 23-24 season he's got up until. And then all of a sudden his form dips. Well, if you're Phil Hodgkinson now, what do you do? You've bigged him up to be this great manager that's going to come in and he sort of revolutionise the club. You give him a contract extension. can you sack him? Phil is not very well thought of within the fan base as it is. If he goes and does something ridiculous like that, after getting rid of Cowleys, I know that was probably a little bit behind the scenes as well, but after they kept us up, he sacked them. He's had to sack Jan. He had a little bit of an involvement in getting him in. So that'd be 3 managers there that he's actually, had involvements bringing to the club. It's going to cost him a fair bit of money. He's going to end up spending more money on bloody hiring and firing managers than there is on players at this rate if he carries on. There's someone on YouTube saying, if we go down in League One, if we keep Carlson go down, would you keep him? I think, yeah, because I think in some respects that might make his job a little bit easier. I know that sounds silly, but if we're going to look to bring these young players through, is League One more of a level to do that? Again, my worry is if
that though, Paul, should it? It shouldn't come to that. Where we've been.
No, it shouldn't. No, I fully agree.
Accepting relegation.
No, I fully agree, mate. And and it was just someone had put on, and if the worst comes to the worst and we do go down, do you get rid or not? And I actually think if we go down, he'd probably be a reasonable manager to have in. But you could argue he's not been backed. Look at players he's been given. Keogh, Holmes. The worrying thing for me that more than just the Carlos situation at the moment, and if I'm going off a little bit off piece here, but it's just the whole situation at the club. I've seen Town crap. I've seen us in League Two. I've seen us been relegated, I think, 3 times in my career watching them. I've seen us in umpteen relegation battles. And never once, during all that, or maybe once or twice, do I feel like I feel now. Because within those battles, when we had Jacko and all that, you had a bit of fight, a little bit of passion behind it all. At the moment, I'm really struggling because if I'm being blatantly honest, the people, not on the pitch, behind the scenes, I don't trust them. I don't particularly like any of them. I don't warm to any of them. With what they come out and what they say on the social media, the statements on club websites. And I think that's what's getting people down at the moment. Nobody can see anyone at that club that can almost grab it by a scruff at neck and drag it away from this relegation fight that we seem to be in. I don't know how you guys feel about that. You might have different views on it, but that's just how I feel at the moment. I just have no faith in anybody there to do anything to stop what's happening at the moment, whether it be the manager, the chairman, director of football, commercial director, and groundsman. I don't have any faith in anybody being able to do anything to sort this situation out. It's just terrible.
Didn't even your back of your shirt sponsor, mate, appease your head, didn't you? Get you inspired. We've got one on.
No, well, you couldn't even read the bloody thing, could you? If I'd have paid for that, I would have been right happy. But anyway.
Phil, I don't think Pos we didn't know how he felt then, really. So
on the fence there, Pos, didn't you? Is your bum sore a bit?
Got a bit of splinters, lad. Sorry.
I think the thing is for me, I know some people say you're a bit naive, but relegation were never on my radar until the last 7 days. I know we've been kind of losing games and stuff, but you saw flickers, didn't you? That Bristol City were a good example where, we just need a goal or whatever. But the worry for me, Phil, is if we're conceding 2 goals every other game, people are shouting for strikers and forward players and this, that, and the other, but there's only we can concede more. There does seem to be no signs, in my opinion, that Carlos is getting in anywhere nearer to either A, controlling the game, B, stopping the goals kind of going in and stuff. And everyone's saying Hull City last season, mate, and it's so hard to argue at the moment because there's no evidence. Knowing Town will probably beat Swansea on Saturday, but it just looks relegation written all over it to me, man, and I hate to say it.
No, I think there's a number of different areas on the pitch that you can look at, can't you? But I think that is a major concern in terms of it's not really taking many chances to score a goal against us. My major concern now is players like Mbenza. I might as well take this point now to mention in the preview show the other day. I mentioned that Watmore were going to be their key player, scored a goal. I mentioned Mbenza were going to be a key player for us, scored a goal. And I mentioned it were going to be 2-1 to Middlesbrough. So I'm not going on that. I'm not going on that show again. Not a chance.
You sit down to Canal Side, Phil.
Phil, you won't be allowed anyway.
God, because I tell you what, as soon as Mbenza went off, it worried me because at the moment it seems to be only kind of set pieces and kind of a ball in from him that's the kind of danger. And if we're not kind of producing the danger up the top of the pitch, there's more and more pressure on your centre halves and in your defence, and that is the concerning part for me. And like you said, Kosi, it wasn't until last night that I looked at the table, and I'm still not too concerned, but it's relegation kind of material. The way that we're playing, the way that things are unfolding on the pitch. Phillips gets a chance and hits the post. It could have easily just snuck inside the post. It could have been a 1-pointer for us. You know, little things like this that's just not kind of falling our way, just all adds up. And last night, I don't think it was a bad performance. There was good parts to it. I felt confident enough in terms of stopping their attack. It was another one of those games for me. It was a pain in the arse because it was another one of those. How many times did Watmore, I was worried about him, but Naby Sarr had him in his back pocket half the time, trying to beat him pace for pace, and he had him. For me, there wasn't that much danger. I didn't feel in danger, but there was nothing. As soon as that, I mean, we're all in WhatsApp groups, aren't we? And as soon as they got a man set off, game over. Not a chance. And I can't believe there weren't more people on Twitter or social media saying, get Naby Sarr up front. Because I was thinking it straight away. Because everyone's been saying it, and I know it's a bit of a joke. But just, you know, someone, I mean, we had the 2 lads up front anyway, but nothing to lose. We had nothing to lose. And still nothing changed.
You'd expect, I mean, I tweeted, didn't I? What could possibly go wrong when we score that first goal at the end of the league? But it's like you're expecting errors, and like you were on about players are mentally expecting errors. But I think the biggest problem we've got at the club is just inexperience in all position. I'm not talking about on the pitch; it's kind of off it. I mean, we'll move on to Phil's comments like last week in his statement, but it's obviously Phil, if he was on now, say this is the reality. It was kind of boom, there you go. You know, for me, the first thing I kind of thought was, this has come out all of a sudden. Someone who kind of, to me, who knows the fan base, knows the temperature of the supporters, are doing something a lot earlier. For me, this seemed, could be wrong, but it's almost like, right, you know, we better get something out here because the fans are not happy. I've been on podcasts or what have you, and that. So I could be totally wrong. Out it came. I mean, stuff that I picked up on, 10 to 12 million lost due to COVID. Obviously, you know, big issue as well. Mentioned about the 3 windows, kind of, obviously that's been held against him from the start, and it was 3 windows to sort out. He's saying, obviously, again, that COVID's kind of changed the dynamic. He's not been in the position, let me quote here, that he wanted to be expected to be in the terms of cash input. He's covered short-term cash flow gaps and some transfer business, he says, and that as well. He mentioned about paying off debt, that, you know, not kind of things that fans want to hear and stuff like that as well. And obviously, you know, there's been so much talk recently on social media about how much Dean Oil owes and what he needs to be paid back. But I think the thing, to me, though, again, people probably won't, it's damned if he does, damned if he don't, but, you know, there's so much of the club stuff comes out, it's official, like a club statement or a, you know, kind of an in-house TV and stuff, to me, kind of, it don't feel right. I think there should be a Q&A or something like that as well. I've seen it a couple of weeks ago in Scarborough, they had like director on and everybody kind of firing in and stuff like that as well. I just think, I don't know what you thought, Pos, but yeah, it was good to hear from him, and it was interesting. He was saying every month we're going to get a key figure of the club, but you're almost like, the people at the club don't really want to do it, but it's like he'll be just saying, no, that's the reality. There it is, bang. But I just want a bit more than that. I want, you know, Johnny to have him on Radio Leeds or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. He's always said he's upfront and honest, but what I read in there, it were kind of, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I wanted to hear, but it were just like, it were kind of okay. I didn't think.
Didn't particularly tell you all you didn't already kind of know. You know, a lot of stuff it said.
What
for
did
me,
you want to hear, Paul?
You could work out. It added a little bit of figures to it, didn't it? You know, like
what did you want to hear there? What did you want to hear from him? Let me change it to that. What would you wanted to hear more or from him?
I'd like to hear, I think with anything, a plan to go forward. You know, all right, I don't need to know the exact, you know, nuts and bolts of this plan, but it's all right coming out and saying we've lost money through this, we've lost money through that, you know, we've lost money through this, but all right, yeah, we know that you won't be making as much money because of COVID and stuff like that, but, you know, tell me how are you going to think, you know, how we're going to try and recoup this money, you know, when we're back up and running, you know, is there any new initiatives? Are we all right? Are we secure? You know, I remember him, you know, telling every man and his dog on Talk Sport that by this time, if football went back 60-odd clubs that had gone bust, and you know, how many have gone bust? I don't know of any. So, you've got to take everything that Phil says with a pinch of salt, I think, at the moment. Well, in general, anyway, because he said that much in the past that hasn't really come to fruition. And I think, yeah, I'm not saying that COVID hasn't had an impact. I don't for 1 minute think that I'm saying that that's not had any impact whatsoever. But it's such an easy smokescreen to hide behind, isn't it? It's COVID. Everything's COVID related. Look at Barnsley. They needed a couple of strikers in January and they went out and got 2. You're telling me that, they're not struggling without any money? There's a lot of clubs out there that haven't got any money. It's not just Huddersfield Town, and when you're hearing stuff like he's got to put money into his other businesses, which I fully get, he's got other business interests. He's entitled to do what he wants with his money. But again, as a fan, you don't want to be hearing that, do you? You want to be hearing that Huddersfield Town are his prime, that's his first thought. And if he can put money into them, why is he not putting money into us? And that, again, you start asking yourself questions. Does he only have the income to support Town due to his other businesses? A lot of owners these days in football clubs have personal wealth. It's literally money in the bank that they can go and say, right, you know what, we need a couple of strikers. I'm going to get out, go to the cash machine and draw out a couple of million quid and buy a couple of strikers. I think another thing that annoyed me from it were when he talked about, wanting to spend millions. I don't know about you three guys, but I've not seen anybody wanting to spend millions and millions. We've tried that, and look what happened. All we want is a player who's not 35, never played, players who haven't played for us before, not really done that well, to get some players in that we can get behind and actually think, do you know what, these guys are going to sort us out. So a little bit like yourself, Kosi, I'm pleased that they've seen the feedback, heard the feedback and acted upon it. I think it should be more proactive, and hopefully these messages that come out monthly will be a little bit like that, but it's all about the content for me. It's all right coming out and saying something, but if you don't mean there's no point in saying it.
It's really depressing, really, because I've seen a few people say maybe it'd be better if we went out of League One and regrouped and kind of came again. But and exactly that what was said about coming out of the Premier League. I know COVID's the elephant in the room, and I know the Dean Hall situation is also the elephant in the room. But I just think that there doesn't be any ambition kind of there. It's flat. There's nothing really.
Ambition's a key word for me, Kosi. I think kind of there's two things there for me. It's not as black and white as simply going back down and coming back up again. Kind of how long before did it take us to get out of League One? We kind of no God-given right to go down for one season, rebuild and come straight back up. I think on your point about ambition, Phil in his statement talks about the wage bill, and he references the fact that it's currently £19 million, which is, in his words, unsustainable. And that kind of a comparison, our wage bill when we got promoted was close to £12 million. If you kind of believe what you read on Twitter and various different sources, a £19 million wage bill in the Championship kind of puts you probably very much in the bottom quarter of clubs. There are clubs probably out there with much, much higher wage bills than that. And again, to your point, Pos, I don't think any of us expect us to have the highest wage bill in the Championship. I think we recognise the status of the club and the size of the club relative to kind of other teams. But to say that £19 million isn't sustainable and kind of conclude from that we need probably a wage bill around the kind of the 15 million, 16 million mark with inflation, etc. That for me doesn't scream ambition. It doesn't scream a desire to compete at the top of the table. It doesn't scream a kind of belief we're going to get promoted. It screams we're in for more of the same, and we're going to kind of go back right to the start of the podcast, rely on these kids, although seemingly not, but we're going to kind of scrape around on free transfers and people at the end of their careers, people at the start of their careers, and not much in the pomp. And you know what, if that's where we're at, then so be it. But it kind of then, I think people are legitimately allowed to ask, how has it kind of got to that point, and where has this legacy gone? Really?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that. I mean, someone copied and pasted, but Dean's kind of comments when he left, he were like, not to quote him really, but it almost like, come down, it's been a horrible season, but we've kind of got a legacy and we'll never kind of be in a situation again. Am I right? Kind of pull me down if I'm not, but it just feels like that. It's like we've never been in the Premier League, mate. We're almost like back to square one, like we came up, we're scraping about for kind of freebies.
Let's be honest, Dean's done Phil, hasn't he? He's done him like an absolute kipper. Let's just come out and say, I'll come out and say it. You three might not endorse that comment, but I will. Dean has had his pants down, hasn't he? Let's be fair, because he's put the non-disclosure on the deal. So Phil can't even come out and say exactly what's going on to defend himself, because he can't, because he's tied up in legal stuff. The only way that we'll ever really know is when accounts get published for the company that actually owns Huddersfield Town, which is obviously owned by Hodgkinson, because he will have had to put money into that company then to transfer it across to to Dean or whatever. So until that happens, we're not really got any idea. You can presume, what's going on, and a lot of talk about oil. Just moving sort of goalposts a little bit to talk about oil. I don't blame him for taking his money back. I think the way that he's seen an opportunity to get it back, and he's getting it back in the quickest possible time frame because he just knows how much of a money pit Huddersfield Town is. Again, I think he's sold to Phil because he's probably the only person that he could find that would agree to the sale that Hoyle wanted. You know, he's got his 25%. I believe once he gets his full money back, he'll just maybe give that away. I think he's kept that 25% to ensure that he does still have a little bit of a say in how club is run, so he can sort of guarantee to get his money back. And it's really sad in a way. You know, Hoyle did everything possible. He got us to the Premier League. He took us to heights that we've never got to. And although, like I say, I understand why he's taking his money back. It's a hell of a lot of money. Is there a better way to do it at the moment with COVID? Could he have said, you know, all right, Huddersfield Town, Phil, I can see you struggling for money. Let's defer next payment until, you know, you're in a better financial position, which would have helped us out a little bit more. You don't know, do you? Once it's set in stone, is it set in stone and it can't be changed? I'm sure that's not right. But it just leaves a bit of a sour taste with Dean, to be fair. I'm not privy to his financial situation, but, you know, £300 million reported, you know, wealth and stuff like that. Is he really scratching around down back at sofa and needs this money immediately? Or could he defer it for, you know, a couple more seasons? I don't know. It all just seems a bit, you know, cloak and dagger. And
how are you seeing it, mate? I think...
I don't even look after my own finances, Kosi. Mrs. sorts it all out for me, so I have no idea what
pocket money.
Us as electricity provider. I have no idea. But one thing that always that's quizzed me with all this, and I won't say anything because there's no info to tell us exactly what's happened. So there's no point me trying to guess. But I always thought chairman took over a football club knowing that they're going to lose money. So you're not making money with a football club. Surely you lose money. So I don't get that a chairman could come out of a football club and get all his money back without kind of losing any money. I don't get that. I would have thought you always, you know, whether you've invested in Canal Side and surely there's always going to be a loss somewhere along the line. Like I say, I have no idea. So, but it does concern me. I just think the mystery around all of it is not good for anybody. Because you don't want to hold anyone to account. You just want to know what's happened. So we just want to know who's got a stake in the club, who's got this, who's got that, who's got this money, why is that money gone there? And that's part of the reason I were quite, I won't say upset, but annoyed at the start of the season because the lack of information in terms of what direction, like you've mentioned there, Posy, about what direction the club's going to go. There was no information there in terms of what our kind of thoughts are. And then this information regarding the money and the funds was just really, really. You just said earlier there. I don't want Town to go out and spend 20 million on a player. Bloody no chance. I think that's absolutely pointless in the position that we're in. But I want to know that we can compete with at least a mid-table bloody championship team, not bottom end. And the amount of fans that we get to games is a lot more than majority of the clubs in that league. So why are we trying to shuffle around with one of the lowest budgets when other teams have got much higher budgets than ours? And I'll go back to it. I've said this before. When Cardiff dropped out, before we got promoted, Cardiff were on about 40 million a year in terms of the wage. And that's after they'd come out of the Premiership for a while. And that was years ago. That was about 7 years ago. And we're talking about 15 million for a Championship club. No chance. Absolutely no chance. Just stinks.
I saw something the other day, and I think he said, I think out of the 6 Championship clubs that have recently been relegated, so obviously 2 seasons worth 5, are now pushing for promotion, or, you know, certainly back, you know, up in promotion fight. Leaves 1 that isn't. No prizes for guessing who that one is you know, it's us. But I don't know, like you say, Phil, without the long-term vision and stuff like that, you start to put the pieces in your own mind, don't you? And you start to come up with all sorts of random conclusions. It seems to me that Phil's just trying to get this debt paid, get it off as quickly as he can. And in some respects, it does make financial sense. But as is acknowledged as a fan, you don't want that, do you? You don't want to pay off a debt. Football's not played on the spreadsheet, is it? It's played on grass.
Canal Side has even been downscaled as well, isn't it? You haven't even, I know that was touted as the legacy, but even that's just not. And I know I'm being built, yeah, what have you? But it's just it's so depressing, really. And I think maybe the results kind of papered over the few cracks early on in the season, but someone posted it today. It's been doing the rounds, I think, on Twitter, just kind of in the last 10, 12 years where we've been. It's just kind of, we've been fighting for...
Yeah, seeing that.
But mentally, as a fan, never mind players, we've talked about mental state of players, but as a fan, it's like, here we go again and stuff. It's, like that Wagner thing, it was just so brilliant because we just had something to grab on. We were bolshy, we were getting stuck in, we were winning games, we were pissing everyone off because we were doing this wave and stuff. It felt like you were part of something really special, but
chalk and cheese to how it is now, mate. Chalk and cheese. Look at when you could go to Canalside, you could have a pint, you could bump into players a couple of times. Go down and have an Amstani, and you'd bump into a couple of players, and you just felt like everything were together. Whereas now you feel at arm's length from everything. You just feel that. I know you can't go, so that's a big thing. But even then, even when you could, if you could go, you just feel like you're constantly being pushed away, and go away, let us do what we need to do, and just keep paying your money and come back.
Also, there'd have been a demo after Saturday's game, wouldn't there? For me, there would, wouldn't there? Do you think?
They're very lucky that fans out there, because at that Wycombe, that would have been a toxic atmosphere. That to concede it, to concede in towards by 87 minutes or something like that. They'd have been booed off, and to quite like I say, they're lucky that fans out there, because it could be getting quite volatile down there at the moment with how things are going.
Si, cheer us up, mate. There must be something exciting. We've got a back of the shirt sponsor. Didn't we have a good result against Sheffield United B team? Or I don't know, but we're desperate for a win. And Swansea City at home on Saturday is not exactly the game you'd pick, would you, to get the show on the road as Mr. Amos repairs back there, flying out there, but. We're just needing something out with to kind of get us going. But I think what depresses me a little bit, even more, is that even if we stay up, Pods, where are we kind of heading? Like if we scrape up 51 points, because Carlos is...
Same again next year, mate. Same again next year. Yeah. Unless Phil suddenly wins lottery and has, loads of spare income, I can't see him putting the amount of money in. I don't... It's hard, isn't it? Because you see reports like that one that came out not so long ago, and he said something like he was in top. I can't remember. Someone will correct me on Twitter. 10. He said he were up there, one of the most wealthiest owners. I know, like it can be perceived in assets and businesses worth X, Y, and Z. It's not physical pound notes at bank. But again, as a fan, you see that, and then he's telling you that he's not putting any money in to buy players. You're like, well, nothing seems to just line up for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking down those that don't need looking down.
Here, Joe Garner, big fan of yours, Phil, on your outburst. Yes, Mr. Senior, he says. It's TFC. Didn't Phil say on this podcast that buying the club probably came too early for him? He's out of his depth, in my opinion. Webber to Bromby, massive downgrades too. Remember top 30 club ambition or waffle? Doug Barnett says, would you trust in charge to use the money wisely? Do you have faith in the staff at the club? Jonathan Denny. Remember Dean said 12 years ago, the only training facilities were 2 porta cabins at Stores Hall. Josh Jennings, hard to make the point of bumping into players, etc. Though I understand the community spirit, but if that was happening under this regime, everyone would say it's tin pot and a sign of no investment. Thomas Bradshaw, I don't trust them at the board and recruitment level to use that money wisely. We've obviously not got a good enough system in place. It's very amateur. Someone must have took notes off Webber. Joe Garn again. Phil's replaced the Cowleys with Carlos, but he hasn't backed him anyway, bringing in free agents and 500k players. And Doug Barnett, we could ask the EFL to appoint Darren Drysdale for the Swansea game, and he could headbutt Ayew. Anyway, but that was incredible last night, wasn't it? But he's going to get done for it, isn't he? But I was just thinking, bravo, because someone put my 20s right. Kalina used to do that for fun, but it was an amazing incident, wasn't it? And that Alan Judge is only like 5'6", so it did look kind of worse than it was. But part of me thinks referees get so much harm, and they must be able to do it even more now without any crowds. But I suppose you can't do that, can you? But it was an amazing incident, Phil. Have you ever known anything like that, any level you've been at?
Yeah, I mean, non-league, I've read something just before I came on, but it's about a referee being told to lose a bit of weight because he's been going to the gym and making himself massive. I think there's a couple of refs that I can't remember his name, but he slicks his hair back. He's a young ref. He's quite muscular. I can't remember which league he's refereeing now, but I've seen him recently, and he gives that kind of persona of being quite a tough guy. I don't mind it, to be honest, because I'll tell you why. If the players are giving it the ref should be able to give it back. Simple as that. So, for instance, like you'll call the referee up on a decision. What's all that about, ref? And best one you'll hear is they'll turn around and they'll go, you just need to concentrate on your game because you're having an absolute shocker.
We used to have a ref like that.
Yeah.
On a Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Simple things like that. And I'm not being funny. The amount of players who think they're hard as nails and square up to referees and give it all this. I mean, I'm sick of players doing that to each other anyway, like for littlest of bloody incidents. And the amount of players that do that to referees, good on him. Why not? He never headbutted him. He didn't do it like that. I don't think he touched him. He got in his face. Yeah, fair enough. And then he realised what he'd done and just kind of backed off a little bit, didn't he?
Well,
he should have sent young kid off. He just should have sent him off. Go on, get off.
But my footage, I know it was like clickbait with all the social media teams and stuff, but my first thought was refreshing, bravo.
Yeah.
They've took a view as arrogant and I don't know enough about the ref. This is how he is and this, that, and other. But I thought we need to see a bit more than that because it seems to be one-way traffic there. The players kind of calling the shots, the mouthing off. And
so what do we do now then? So do we get every single player who squares up to the referee and points in the face and swears at him and tells them effing this, effing that? Do we get all these players now to come out in the media and apologise to refs? Because you're setting a precedent now because referees had to turn around for something as small as that and apologise. Yeah. Should be apologising to that little lad.
It's disgusting anyway in football. I watched a bit of rugby union the other week and it's chalk and cheese. Referee gives a decision and players just basically accept it. They might ask, I think, is it captain can approach and just say, look, can you explain it to me? They explain it and they go, fair enough, and they trot off and they go what they need to do. Football's it's not a new thing, is it, where folk have a go at ref, and it's not right. It's pathetic, really, because you're just undermining. I ref, obviously I coach at junior level, and you don't always, you never get a ref appointed by the league, so I've had to do it. And I've had kids at 7 or 8 turn around and give me a mouthful, and it's like, bloody hell, you're 7-year-old. If I wouldn't have dared.
Did he get in the face?
Yeah, mate, some of them are bigger than me.
I was just going to say this, Paul, that I'm involved in local football and I'm a nightmare for this. I'm a nightmare with coaches shouting at kids, like under 7s and 8s, shouting at kids, all this, instead of letting them have fun, and shouting at referees and parents shouting at refs. And not so long ago, one of the coaches actually walked around to the other side of the pitch and started shouting at our parent, who's also a coach that's volunteering for a game and reffing. And I walked around and I says, do you realise what you're doing in front of 7 and 8-year-old kids? The kind of, and this is why it's happening, because coaches are doing it. Parents are shocking. Someone's bloody grandma weren't shouting at referee not so long ago. Yeah, it's going to happen more and more now. Unfortunately, the way that society is going, people have zero respect. And the referee, I mean, who'd be a referee? Who'd do it? There needs to be more ex kind of players for me refereeing, because some of the diving, the cheating, the way that they buy fouls, you can see that a mile off it, and you should be able to like wave play, etc. But you wouldn't want to do it, would you?
And we've got a message from Neil Wayne. Do you remember him, Neil Wayne?
Bloody hell.
Yeah, it's for the Sultan how much he's changed Bradford from. He's changed his Twitter handle. He don't come on now because we don't win and stuff, but nah. But he asks a simple question. We've got to end it in this. Where do we start next season? Championship or League One? I'm going to go last on this and bottle it. So, Si, where do we start?
I'm the optimist. I'm going to say Championship.
Why?
You asked me a question 5 minutes ago, Kosi, to give you something positive. We're only 10 points away from 7th or 8th. Now, 10 points right now feels a long way away, I appreciate. But in this table, in this division, 2-3 results, and it can be a very, very different picture. And I still think on our day, we are quite a good team. But the challenge is we haven't had our day for quite a while now, and we haven't been able to string 90 minutes together. So I think we'll stay up. Maybe. Only just. But sorry, Cosy, one thing. But I do think you point around, where will we be next year? And will we just be in the same situation again? I think it's a very valid one. Because right now, to kind of, I guess, summarise what has been discussed, I do feel as though we'll just be having the same conversation in the same situation, probably in February next year, with a similar sort of score.
Well,
that's what concerns me.
And you bring us down, mate. A bit of a downer there.
Shit sandwich for you there, Cosy.
Also, 17 points to get seems bloody miles off for me. What about you, mate? Are we League One next season or Championship, mate, at this stage?
I mean, I said that when we did pod preview, season preview, I was saying we were nailed on to get relegated. We've had a decent start, and I sort of changed my opinion and thought, do you know what, we'll probably be all right. Before 3 games ago, I would have said we'll be all right. I think last 3 games, certainly going in front twice and not winning against Wycombe and Middlesbrough, who are on terrible form themselves, has really dented that belief that we will stay up. I think we'll probably just about stay up, but I think it'll probably be because there's teams below us that, I know it sounds obvious, won't pick up as many points, rather than us changing anything or doing something miraculous with how we play to pull us away. I think we'll lose majority of games going forward. 17 points has been touted as the amount that we need to get. It might not even be that many. But I think we'll probably just about do it. And then I fully agree with Si that, fast forward 12 months, if we're still doing this podcast then, if people haven't got sick of us, we'll be saying exactly the same. And it could be a different manager in charge because,
Bill, I'll leave it with you. I've got some good news for you, mate. Coventry 2 down at home to Norwich. Birmingham are 1 down away at Millwall. Rotherham still 0-0 against Bournemouth. It's only just kicked off that. So
I'm going to be a bit negative. I feel like I feel like the way that we're playing at the moment and the way that things are turning out, I really do feel like it's relegation fodder. But I agree with the fact that it's going to be reliant on other teams below us, definitely. The games in hand doesn't look great, so it really doesn't look great. So if they have an upturn of fortune and they start getting a run together, we could be struggling. So I really do fear for us, to be honest. Just going on to what you said there about next year, I feel like on the flip side of that, if we do manage to stay up, I do feel like it's a season out of the way with a manager who's trying to get his style of football across and a team that have been training for a full year and learning that style. I do feel a little bit more positive if we do manage to stay up. I really do. I just think that it would go to the recruitment, which worries me. It really does. So I think if we had some good recruitment with the squad that we have, staying in the Championship, I think we'd be more than okay because we've shown we can play some real good football. No doubt about that. But yeah, going back to what's going to happen at the end of the season, I'm worried. I'm worried.
You've got, then you must be. You've got to be off your head, if you're not worried at the moment.
Yeah, I just think it's performances.
I think we're going to stay up, Pos, and I think we're going to win a couple of games where you'll never expect us to win. So Saturday's the perfect time. We had a good record, didn't we, against kind of bottom half teams that were keeping us up. But I don't know, I've wheeled out the Watford game and the Swansea game and stuff. But I just think we're almost like a counter-attack game where we're going to come back into it. But unless we shore up this defence and stuff or something changes and Carlos is...
Thing is, Kosi, when you talk about being a counter-attack team, who have we got now on the pitch that's going to be able to do that and carry that forward?
Well, Adams is knackered in and out, and Benza's going to be out for a bit. Exactly.
No Karoma. And that's what worries me. That's what worries me because the goals, we're losing goals.
Mate, Phillips ought to get a start, but we've said it before, but that was another thing that depressed me a little bit. Saturday, God, opening up all wounds, but it's like you said, Phillips would be great he's give me an option if we needed a second striker. Again, another comment, I'm thinking... it shouldn't be the second, it would be first wave. Bloody Campbell is finishing, but...
Would you change formation then? Would you change formation? Would you stick 2 up front? Would you play him up front with Campbell?
Oh, mate, I would have...
Play 4-4-2?
4-4-2. Get Mike Bassett in charge, lad.
You said he's more of a guy who brings guys in and holds the ball up, but if that's kind of his maybe role, without having goal scorer, then I maybe would, Phil. If you're...
I think 3-5-2. I can't believe we haven't reverted to 3-5-2 at times. I think the Vallejo looks good. And I think him slotting in between Sarr and Keogh would be ideal for us. I really do.
We've had since some wingers now as well, haven't we? There's no Benza, no Aarons, no Karoma.
Get him on.
Gets Pippa high up the pitch. Pippa's high up the pitch.
Baby. Get him on.
Who's that?
Sober Thomas. You had a glimpse on Saturday, but only two.
I missed it.
Another one with an amazing haircut, Phil. Matt Glennon says these barbers are open, but I think that's a little... obviously, as I know. Guys, I've finished us on a positive. Thanks so much. It's been hard work tonight. We're always going to be... Thanks to everyone for contributing and Oh, my beautiful guest on that as well. And we're going to be back next week. We've got another midweek game, haven't we? We've got Derby, haven't we?
Swansea then Derby. Yeah.
Games and Christ, let's hope for some better fortune there. So remember, they used to play it when we used to go out when we got beat at John Smith's. So keep the faith.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.